And Drivetime, we spoke to T.D. Barry Cowan about Bertie Ahern's readmission as a Fianna Fáil party member, and we got an extraordinary reaction from listeners by text. Let's just say he's a very divisive figure, as it turns out. And then last night, of course, the former Taoiseach got a standing ovation from a crowd of 300 at a party event in Dublin to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. He declined to answer yet again when he was asked if he might run for president in 2 years' time. Well, Derek Mooney was a government advisor under Bertie Ahern and Brian Cowan. He's now a public affairs consultant and he's continued to work with Bertie Ahern in recent years. He joins us now on the line. You're welcome, Derek, to the programme this evening. And I know you were at that event, actually, that was organised last night by, people that have spoken of him as potentially the next party leader, Jim O'Callaghan. Can you tell us, how did the party faithful respond to Bertie Ahern?
I think, as you said earlier, there was a tremendous reaction when he came into the room. He was welcomed. I think people were there to hear him speak about the Good Friday Agreement. And they were there to speak, and indeed that what they actually heard was a masterclass in how you conduct negotiations, how you see the other person's viewpoint, how you understand what the other side can deliver, and how the responsibility on yourself to bring your own people with you. So I think from that point of view, it was a very, very successful event. But I think it wouldn't be correct to say that people weren't also delighted to see him back as a member of the Fianna Fáil party for the first time in a number of years. And I think there was a genuine warmth in the room, but there was also an enthusiasm amongst the membership that I would discern now. It's a while since I've been a member of Fianna Fáil, but certainly from the people I know from years back, but also a large number of young people who were there to see a political master deliver a masterclass. I think they were enthused.
Yeah, I find that really interesting, Derek, and I've heard that said as well over the last couple of days since it was announced that he was returning. This idea that he might reinvigorate Fianna Fáil, that, he has this touch amongst the people that, hasn't been seen since he was last in politics, that he could have ideas for the future of Fianna Fáil. Do you agree with that? And if so, what does it say about all the other people who've been in Fianna Fáil since he left?
But what it does, it's a reminder of what political magic feels and sounds like, and what a sense of it. And as you say, look, the reaction to yesterday's programme in terms of that, Bertie Ahern excites reaction.
Yeah.
Vast majority is positive, but there's always going to be a certain amount of negative. But he excites people. People can also relate to him. He's a good communicator.
Sorry to interrupt you, but do you think the vast majority is positive? Because we don't know really, do we? How people feel. There hasn't been a poll on Bertie Ahern.
No, it's true enough. And no, that's absolutely true. But in terms of, you go back to even in 2007, when a lot of the things that are known now were known then, and that he was still able to deliver a solid government performance and electoral performance. So in terms of, I think people also look back at his career and the whole of it, and they look at the downside certainly, but also the upsides in terms of his achievements, in terms of what he had done, in terms of his leadership, but also in terms of his skills as a political communicator, his ability to talk to people in language that's simple, straightforward, direct. And I think that's what people found last night in the hall, that here was somebody who had not only an understanding of what was happening in the North, but rather than a kind of a retrospective and saying, well, this is what I did and this is how I did it, etc., there was a great deal of looking forward. And he was extremely positive and upbeat. And he was saying that he was optimistic for the future and recognised that restoring the institutions was going to be very, very difficult, and that there was several hills to be climbed by the DUP and others. But he was still optimistic, and it was that ability to look forward. I think that's what people were looking for, was somebody who's looking to the future. And then indeed what they...
And I think most people, even Bertie Ahern's critics, will admit or concede that he has done an awful lot for Ireland in his role in the Good Friday negotiations. But there are very many people who believe he shouldn't have any role in public life again because of everything that happened, because of the findings of the Mahon Tribunal. Do you think that he is a very I know you've said he is a very divisive figure, but I wonder, outside of Fianna Fáil, do you think he has any support at all?
Well, see, the point he's not looking to get into public life. He's not seeking for electoral office that I'm aware of. But what he's talking about is that he has a skill set, he has an experience, he has a contact list, he has a contact book, which is available there to help this government or a government of any hue to help to get the process going again. Because this is a very, very difficult time. It's a very fraught time. The institutions are down again. The institutions, since over the last 25 years, it often seems that the institutions have been down more often than they've been up. But here's somebody who understood how the difficulty of getting them there in the first place, who still knows a lot of the principal characters and still knows a lot of the principal people, who understands the fundamentals of the agreement, and therefore has a skill set that he's made available. And I think that's the positive.
Can I ask you, Derek? Can I ask you? We're talking to you. Your expertise is wider politics, but also you're a former Fianna Fáil advisor. I'm going to give you a new job now. You're an advisor. You're an advisor to Sinn Féin. Does Bertie being back in Fianna Fáil give you fodder?
I don't think so. Now, it's been very interesting to look at some of the Sinn Féin people on Twitter over the last 48 hours or so. There's the people who are kind of retweeting all the stuff from Mahon, etc. But these are people who a year ago were reminding us that Bertie Ahern was not ruling out referendum, was talking about unity, was talking about republicanism in a way that maybe the current Fianna Fáil leadership tends not to. So I think Sinn Féin will find it very, very confused.
Sinn Féin, or I could give you a job as Labour advisor or Soc Dem's advisor, Bertie being back in Fianna Fáil, could they not say as political foes that the old guard is back in Fianna Fáil? The Fianna Fáil that was at the helm for 3 successive governments that led us to the economic crash, that they're back again. The Fianna Fáil of the Mahon Tribunal back again. I mean, is that not a political point that could be scored by those
First of all, I don't think any of those parties would thank you for wishing me upon them, so we'll leave that one aside. But I also think in terms of, I don't deny that there are downsides, and neither I don't think with Mr. Ahern. But the point is that he has this skill set, he has this ability. And this has been recognised even by, you mentioned parties there who've been critics of his. The biggest single critic of his over the large period of his time in office, particularly as Taoiseach, was Fine Gael. And yet you've had Simon Coveney and Leo Varadkar at various times seeking his advice and seeking his counsel on Northern Ireland and about how you re-establish things. So I think from that point of view, you have to kind of look at this in the round.
You mentioned Derek, how I think it was Sinn Féin you were saying were pointing out that Bertie Ahern had a different view on the referendum than the leadership, current leadership, Micheál Martin in Fianna Fáil. And Bertie Ahern actually was asked last night about this by Patricia McBride, I think, and he said that if Fianna Fáil doesn't follow its Republican aims and objectives, you could end up on 15%. Is that a dig at Micheál Martin, do you think? I don't think Micheál Martin would welcome that comment.
No, I don't think it was a dig on him, because you have to take everything else he said last night as well, where he was talking about the great work of the Shared Island Initiative, which is a direct project put forward by Micheál Martin. He was talking about that work, but he was talking about what other things need to be put in place. And in terms of how Fianna Fáil speaks about its own republicanism, how Fianna Fáil becomes the centre of gravity for republicanism on this island. So I think he was talking about that. So I would, again, I don't think things should be seen in the terms of digs at or etc. Here is somebody who's back in Fianna Fáil, who is offering to help and to assist, who has a very clear outlook, has a very clear analysis of what can be done and can be achieved. So I think
presidential run in his future, do you think? He didn't rule it out again, but you get the sense that he's just playing with us.
On that one, I honestly don't know. If I were asked to advise him, and you mentioned at the point that I've worked with, it's a very, very, very narrow area, not just on one particular project revolving Turks and Kurds. But no, in terms of if I were advising him in the presidency, I would say that I think he has a far greater contribution to make outside of the Áras than inside the Áras. But that's not really.
Would that be a nice way of telling him not to run?
No, it wouldn't, because if he did decide to run, I'd be very happy to back him.
Would you advise him to run?
I would say to him that he would make a much better contribution.
Get out of it, Derek, will you? For God's sake. We're not in Fagans now.
But sorry,
you have me advising Fine Gael, Sinn Féin, Labour. When I offer honest advice, you won't accept.
If he did decide to run, you're saying you'd back him. Would you run the campaign for him? Do you think he'd have a good chance if he did?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't be nowhere near that senior level. There are people far closer to Bertie and to this day who would be far better at doing that than I would.
Okay, but do you think he'd have a good chance? Would he have a good chance?
I think there's a very strong public reaction out there to him, and I think people do like him. I think there is an admiration for what he has done, and I think it's seen in the round. But I think, again, we're getting far too far ahead of ourselves in this one. Okay. I think that his immediate plans are to assist in the best way he can on the negotiations going forward, and I think that's where people's focus should be. Right. And sometimes what people say is what they mean.
On the point of him being divisive, just some of the texts coming in. One person says, no to Bertie. Another person says, lads, would you leave Bertie alone? So keep the text coming to 51551. We'll be back after this. Derek Mooney, thank you very much.